Is there anybody that inspired you to actually set up a course, international program of this degree?
This came out of my life in the early 80s. I became disenchanted with what we do, business-wise.
Mm-hmm.
I had seen I'd been around the world already. I played with Miles Davis. I mean, I had done what you consider jazz success story, and it was, no question. But my personality was such that I felt I have a lot of aptitude for organization.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty good at it. And leadership. I mean, I've been doing it since I was in high school. When I look at my record, it's always been in charge of the president, or whatever you want to call it, different things. We had an association in the early 70s called Free Life Communication.
Mm.
Michael Brecker, Randy Brecker, Bob Moses. These are all the young cats that I organized because we had to go out and play. We were playing for each other in lofts in Manhattan, and we were not playing for people. So we formed an association, we got some funding, et cetera, et cetera. So in the early 80s, with this disenchantment, I had a marriage that went bad, I got sick, et cetera. I said, there must be something else in the world besides playing the Village Vanguard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is useful and practical. And so the first place I went to was the Peace Corps,
mm-hmm.
which I don't know if you know about, but it was, Kennedy started that in the 60s. Another organization I had a meeting with, actually, Save the Children, which is still in existence. I felt that maybe I could go into a charitable situation, bring music to the people. I just had a desire, not a real format. And very honestly, they told me, at least I went to Washington, D.C., I went into Save the Children, and the woman, she said, you have a great resume, you've seen a lot of different things than the normal people we get, but we don't need any saxophone, we need, agriculture and water and food and seeds and all that stuff. And I understood that. So I left that experience, which was a 1 or 2 year thing, with then trying to think about being a lawyer, and a good lawyer and a positive lawyer, and not not the terrible shit that. And I took the test for law school, and I got into a few schools. I didn't think it's like Trump won he won the presidency and he didn't expect to. I didn't expect to get into law school, and I got into 3 or 4 in New York because I figured, I'm definitely going to still play and so forth. And my parents were they said, oh man, we support you and all that stuff. And I took, took the words of many, advice from many. One particular guy was a drummer, Pete LaRocca, who played with Coltrane and Sonny Rollins, a very famous guy in the 60s. Went on, my relationship went on until he died 10 years ago. And he was a lawyer. He became a lawyer because he was also disenchanted. And he said to me, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking you're going to change the world. You're thinking we can make things better, get the real criminals convicted and get the fake guys out of it, blah, blah, blah. And you're not going to see that. You got to make deals. As soon as you walk in, you make a deal. So don't kid yourself. Anyway, that plus the fact that I really love music, of course, meant that now I'm left with trying to be in the Peace Corps, that failed. Becoming a lawyer, that failed, or it wasn't, I didn't follow through. And then I thought about it, and I said, look, a musician of my stature in New York City, it's hard to make a living, even for me. Hmm. And this teaching thing, the ability to teach and the desire to teach, I grew up with, my parents were teachers in the New York City school system. My brother was a teacher. So I grew up in that milieu, and I understood it. And what I said to myself is, you know what, if I teach, and I get one kid whose life I changed because of what I exposed them to, not necessarily because of me, but because I was the messenger, then I've made a contribution that's nice. So that was the thing. It was either, and in the 80s, you either did something else, taught, or you did studio work. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't about to follow somebody to tell me how to play 8 bars. That's not, that I couldn't do. So I decided I would do the teaching thing, and then as things followed through, I wanted to be, I wanted to do something international. So by 1986, 87, I had been, to Ireland. I had been to Israel, Japan, teaching. Sometimes myself, sometimes with my group at that time, Quest, with Richie Byrack, etc. And I saw what I said in the beginning. People didn't know each other across the border. Pretty stupid. And really, this music could be a great thing, a great cement, so to say, to put people together for positive cross-cultural values. I mean, like we call it cross-cultural communication. And that's when I wrote letters to the people I had done clinics for, about 10, 15 countries. I said, okay, I wrote for 2 years. I wrote letters every couple of months. I said, no, it could be this, it could be that. Basically, a United Nations file. And then I said, okay, 1989, I said, look, we got to go further. The next step is organization. If you want, you meet me at this particular restaurant, Yugoslavian restaurant, in Rothenburg, near Stuttgart, where my publisher of my books was, and they gave me the space. And you meet me at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It was April something or other, 1989. And lo and behold, 15 countries showed up. Among them, Walter, who I did not know, who came because he heard about it. And the guy in Paris who had the school said, if Liebman has something to do with it, you ought to go, because it'll probably be happening. And I was, and he came up to me after the first afternoon of meeting and said, I know what you want to do. Because I said, I'm not doing this. I will be the figurehead. I'll be the organizer. Overall, I'll take care of the meetings, anything to do with the music, but I'm not going to write letters and everything like that because I have a career and I can't do it. And he said, I know what you need. I'm ready to do it. And that's how our relationship started. Without him, this wouldn't have happened unless I found somebody else like him. So that's a long story to say that I was looking for something international that would have an impact. And I found.
What do you think was the most important moment, person or an event in your entire education?
Well, it's what I've written and talked about all the time. It's seeing culture. And particularly, the first time I was 15 years old. And I can't say the light went on that night, but the light got, the switch was ready to go. After that, I said, whoa, wait a minute. This is the saxophone that I play in Brooklyn at home. Right? Same instrument I have under my bed that I practice 1 hour a day with. This guy's playing the same instrument, so I think it looks the same. That was a revelation. Remember, I'm 15 years old. And then, of course, it was the quartet with Elvin and Jimmy Garrison, McCoy, and actually this time Eric Dolphin. And I didn't know anybody or anything about it, but I ended up there because one of the guys in the dance band said, come to a place called Birdland. It's in Manhattan, we take the subway and blah, blah, blah. And that I've written about a lot. It's on my website, too, under articles. But basically, whatever he was doing, it opened the door. Not that night, but subsequently, because I saw him every time I could until he died, so I saw him a lot. I was in school, in high school, but on Friday night and Saturday night, if the train was in New York, I was there. And that changed my life. If it wasn't for that occasion, I don't think I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have done music. Not for a career, I would have loved music, but I would never realize the power of music because of culture, almost single-handedly. And then, of course, in my case, when you say important educational events, playing with Miles Davis, playing with Elvin Jones, playing with Chick Corea, playing with real masters, some of them peers of mine, some of them older. I mean, every time you do that, that's a lesson. And I still, in my talks, in my education, I tell different stories about what I got from Pete LaRocca, what I got from Chick Corea, et cetera, because I was very lucky to be able to be there at the right time in the right place. And this is before school, because there were no courses in jazz in New York at that time in the 60s. I mean, of all the places in the world, it took us until the 80s to have the Manhattan School of Music offer jazz, the New School offer jazz. But in the 60s, 70s, there was New York. You were on your own. You learned by yourself.
When you played with Elvin Jones, where is his genius?
Well, he's like the ocean and the universe at once. I mean, Elvin was, his beat, his feel, which is, of course, inexplicable and you can't explain anything about it, was just not only just one of a kind, which other drummers have also, but it was like, I always use the metaphor of it, oceanic. It was like the goddamn ocean. The guy was like the bottom of the sea, but affecting every wave in the world. He had a great feel in his ride beat. That cymbal, you didn't need the rest of the drums. If just that cymbal beat would make you exhilarated and make you want to play. Plus, of course, the way he played the drums itself and the sound he got. He had so much bottom. That's why I called it oceanic. There was so much bottom in his playing. He was like the tom-toms and the bass drum. Everything was low and deep. It was very real. Plus, he was an unusual personality, as most jazz musicians are, and very gracious. And my time with him was the 70s, when he was really became a band leader after Coltrane died. After he left Coltrane in '66, he went on to have groups, and he was which I became a member of for 2 years. And he really became, let's go see Elvin tonight. Like Roy Haynes has a band. Like Art Blakey had a band. Like Max Roach. Drummers always have bands because they're in the back and they need some guys in front to do what they do. So Elvin became a real band leader and a force to be reckoned with. And when I found myself in his group, I had to pinch myself and say, "Is this real?" Because this is the guy I saw with Coltrane 20 times. And here I am on the bandstand. I'm not no damn John Coltrane. I'm not that. I'm good, but not that good. But here it is. And then from Elvin to Miles Davis, I had a 4-year period that was blessed, 71 to 74, 75, that, very few people could talk about playing with two masters like that and being in the bands at that time in history, and then going on to creating your own music and having your own career. I was very fortunate, very lucky. Became very famous. It's iconic then. And it was myself and saxophonist Steve Grossman, bassist named Gene Perola, really playing modal language. We were Coltrane's sons. In my case, I saw Coltrane, but basically, like the influence Charlie Parker had 20, 30 years before, everybody had to deal with Charlie Parker. You either did it or you didn't do it, but you had to deal with him. You had to deal with Louis Armstrong if you were in the early trumpet player. As a guitar player, you have to deal with Wes Montgomery. That's and Jim Hall. That's number one, number two. And saxophone, of course, it was Coltrane. And here I am playing with the drummer who was the fire that enabled that band to sound so amazing. And I was really, again, fortunate to have him tutoring me. And in a way, jazz is very much master apprentice system. It used to be. Not so much now anymore. Now, the guys you just mentioned that you've interviewed, they play with each other. We played with masters. Because of the timing. Not anything they did. It's because, first of all the masters are dead. but also, the masters that are around don't have bands. Art Blakey had a group. You were in their group for 3-4 years. You were with Elvin Jones. You were in the group for a couple of years. You were Miles Davis. You were in the group that was your job. You reported to work every day. Not every day, but that was your job. And the young ones these days, because there isn't opportunity, they may play with somebody like me or somebody like Randy Brecker or something like that. But it's not the same as playing with Miles Davis or Elvin Jones. And so that's a whole different system of teaching, which is master apprentice, which means do what I do, say what I say, follow directions. And when you leave, you'll know why you were here.
I think you're setting up a standard for a lot of saxophonists and also for a lot of students. From some of the artists that I have interviewed, when I ask them what do they consider to be instructional material that everyone should have in their collection at home, they suggest your book for harmony, for instance.
Well, that book is... I had to do the book because in the 80s, at the period I was talking about doing workshops, in the 80s, people asked me, how did you play like that on that record, particularly that record. Also, Miles on the Corner was 1 or 2 tracks that I'm on. And I really didn't have an answer for them. And I felt a little dishonest because I'm playing something, obviously, that they want to know about, which means I must know about it, but I don't know what it is. Anyway, I started thinking about it and sat down and figured out what I play. And where it came from, Coltrane, Wayne Shorter, Miles, the usual suspects. And I decided, look, I'm going to put this stuff down on a page. And, I like all my books. Once you do it, you're done. You don't have to deal with it anymore. People like that book because it talks about a subject that no one else talks about, which is this quote chromatic approach, the way to do it. And also, I must say, I always found guitar players like the book even more than piano players, and I really didn't think about the guitar players. In fact, this is a side story. When Mick Goodrick called me, this is when the book came out, he was the first that I heard from. He said, "Great book, Lee, it's fantastic." And I said, I must apologize. I have one paragraph somewhere about guitar. Basically, I'm copping a plea that I can't tell you what to do because I don't know the damn fingerings. And you only have 4 or 5 notes at the most, so you're a loser, forget it. I'm sorry, I'm only going to talk piano. And he said, no, that's not true. A lot of it can be done. It demands some work, but it's a very ear and eye opener. And then Matheny called me, and he, because his quote's on the back of the book, obviously, for credit. And I realized that, first of all, guitar players like it, but I realized that musicians like getting inspired by new material that they don't know. That's part of our modus operandi, being jazz musicians. You never know everything. And you're an artist, and you're supposed to gather more influences and more knowledge as you get older. So this book became kind of like, we got to know about this book. And the exact metaphor for this would be when George Russell's Lydian concept book came out. That's before your time. That's the 60s. Everybody had to have that book. Even if they didn't understand it, and even if they didn't follow it, you know, I have it. Oh yeah, I have it too, man. Did you get past page 10? Well, I got to 9. And my book became, because really to go through the book you really got to go to it. Now I teach it in Manhattan School of Music, so of course I force the students to do certain things, but it has, I guess, become a classic because it does discuss things that aren't usually examined.
Well, if I were a saxophone student in the first year, and on an opening day of the very first day and on first year, what would you tell me to do?
Well, first I got to hear you obviously play, and then there are two separate things that I have to see you have. And if you don't have it, we're going to start there. Number one is instrumental, and this would be true if you're a violinist or oboist, doesn't matter. Do you have control of the sound, or is the sound controlling you? Very simple, extremely simple, but it means that book that's translated to Czech. I outline what my teacher. I had, one of the gurus of saxophone named Joe Allard. He taught everybody, etc. But I basically systemized his way of teaching. He didn't have it organized. He just would, say a couple things, blah blah blah. Control of the sound means that the instrument is like an extension of your arm. You pick up a fork, you don't think about how you hold the fork. You've been doing it so long. You put a shirt on, you put the right side on first and the left, and you have your own way of doing it. You have to have that instrument in that kind of way. It has to be completely under your control, under your will. It cannot control you. It's not a piece of this, in the case of saxophone, it's not a piece of brass that I'm holding and that's this object and this thing weighs 2 or 3 pounds or something like that. It looks very complicated and it's shiny and gold because that's part of the deal when you're young. Wow, saxophone looks great, man. I love it, You're going to have to learn how to control the sound. That's number one. And the second thing I look for, this is jazz we're going to talk about. Jazz is a big word now. When we said jazz in the 60s and 80s, even up until the 90s, we knew what that meant. That meant the tradition, meant a certain feel in the rhythm, it meant a certain way of improvising. It was very broad, but there was a lot of commonality. If I say jazz now in 2019, hip hop has jazz. It's not as clean and clear as it used to be. It's it's evolution and it's other influences, especially with the internet. Everybody gets in on it now, and it's all that kind of thing. But what I insist on is very easy. Your parents said this to you have to walk before you run. And that means the rhythm. All music comes down to the rhythm and then the melody. Harmony only exists in the Western world. So that book that I wrote is a complete waste if it goes into past the Atlantic Ocean, except for Europe. Europe, of course, because it's a European classical. It's time feel, what we call that swing feel. Bibbidi, bidi, bidi, bidi. That's it. You are not born with that. Nobody is born swinging. I've had one 15-year-old who I'm playing with next week who's now 35 years old. One kid who came in here for 15 years old. He played out of nowhere, and he swung. And I said, Dave, his name was Dave. I said, Dave, how did you get that? Because that's not something that people have naturally, including me, by the way. He said, I don't know. I came up in a family of musicians. I heard, what could he say? And, I need to have you understand what that swing feels about, which means transcribing. And you're going to take Sonny Rollins and you're going to play with him that I don't know the difference between you and him. And when you do that in the first year or two, that's transcribing. Everybody's transcribing. When I go to class, how many people transcribe? Everybody raises their hand. And then I give them the lecture, of which you can see the written aspect on the website.
I read it.
And then the 20 minutes and then 30 minutes later, depending on how much time I have, I say, how many people transcribe? And no one raises their hand because they didn't do what I insist you do, which is absolutely copy, imitate to nth degree. The more you imitate, the better you imitate, the better chance you have to go on to the next level, which is stylization, playing the music of the day, being a well-formed, well-rounded musician and all that. And the third level is innovation if you are innovative. That happens, great, good for you. But the first level of artistic training is copying and imitation. And you know what? If I'm a car mechanic, I'm going to watch a master do it too. Imitation is number one. We walk by imitation. We talk by imitation. From first from our parents or whoever's around. So those are the two things: would be control the instrument and to have a verifiable swinging jazz feel. You may never play that jazz feel, but you got it in you. That's what I used to start.
Well, if I were in a fourth year and leaving the school already, graduating, and we are saying goodbye to each other, what advice would you give us?
Well, you're entering the pool that a lot of people are swimming in. And competition is really tough out there. It's worse now, or worse or better, depending how you look at it, than it's ever been. Because we are doing our job with school. We're graduating good musicians. The teaching now is great. I don't care if it's New Park or this school, or Prague, or I'm sure, or when we went to South Africa. Again, back to the very first thing. We have more in common than we don't. Everybody knows who Miles Davis is, and everybody's going to graduate from a school with a saxophone in their hand and nowhere to go. Now we have a problem, which is that the business that you, at your age, have only seen the kind of the last vestiges of an industry. The business is almost completely gone. You know, now when I talk to young students, they say, well, first, you can't even get a CD anymore. You got to have a computer that has, I mean, you know, it's unbelievable. Number one. Number two, there's no, the gigs don't pay, or you play for the door. Outside of some stars, of course. There's no publishing money anymore. Everything's on the internet for free. They couldn't police it. There's no way they could. So if I play Naima tonight and it goes online, which it does about 10 seconds after you're done, does John Coltrane get, his estate get anything from Naima? No. No, there's no way to trace it. And that used to be a source of income. There's no record companies anymore. And if there is, it's by the charitable feelings of one person, usually, who does everything himself or herself. And basically, what's happened, and to be serious about it, they've cut off the culture, the society, I don't know whose day is, but the forces that be have made it almost impossible to make a living playing this music. And if you're not going to make a living at 28 years old, you got to deal with that, and you got to come up with something. Because you're soon going to have a kid, or your parents are going to get sick, or you're going to get married, or you're going to get divorced. I mean, you can't fuck around like you do in your 20s and take a $50 gig. That's what you do in your 20s, and you should do it. And you should live in a place like New York where there's action and there's musicians who are better than you and musicians that are not as good as you. You should see all that. But by the time you get to early 30s, now, you know, I'm interested in my guys. I don't want to just put them out into the ocean to swim. I'd say, look, what are you going to do? How are you going to figure it out? Well, I do translating, I do this, I do that. Okay, man, but think ahead 10 years from now. You know, you're going to need to make a living. It's got to be verifiable. You've got to be cool. You've got to think about it. I hate to bring in the mundane, real aspects of being alive in our world, but you got to take care of business. So now, my chant is double major.
Dual major, absolutely.
Dual major, dual, better than double. Dual major, that you do something, first of all, hopefully it interests you. Second of all, it does bring in some income. And third of all, you don't need 4 years of 120 credits or whatever, however the hell they do it, to learn to play a blues. We can do that really on our own. Now, if you're in school and you went to the Manhattan School of Music for jazz, great. But that means you're going to have to find time to do something else besides. And I don't want you to be left here at 25 years old playing $50 gigs and playing good. And you're probably good because everybody's good now. Everybody plays good. What are you going to you don't have anywhere to play. So you go with your friends, do a tour, and you lose $1,500 because you had to pay for the airplane. It's your generation accepts this because you don't know any different. But when we look at it, the guys who came up in the 60s, there was no better time than the 60s through the 90s. You were working everywhere. You were doing records every day. You were in Czechoslovakia. You were in South Africa. I mean, it was unbelievable. And the party is over. And you're living in a different reality than we did, you know, at your age. You know, you're 28, 30 years old?
I'm 31.
Okay. All right, so I'm 72. So that 30 to 40 year period, jazz was really, and the reason it's like this, jazz was supported in Europe especially by grants and arts councils. If it wasn't for that, there'd be no jazz. America is not that. We don't have much. We have little local grants and stuff like that. And that's why guys don't work in America that much. They go to Europe. My whole I mean, I used to be in Europe every month. Now it's slowing down. But it is European cultural money that supported the music. You're not out there looking at the box office like a rock concert. Oh, we brought in 10 million and we expenses are 8 million. We made 2. That's the Rolling Stones. That's a different story. We're looking at here cultural. It's a culture house in Bremen, Germany. They have one concert a month, and they have anything from John Scofield to you playing, depending on their income and how much money they can afford. And that's about all we get. So now we're back to a thing that was Mozart, which is patronage. You better have a rich uncle or company or somebody who likes you to get by in this music. Because financially there's no money. That's the truth. That's the bottom line. Again, I hate to mix commerce and art, but we have to pay attention to. You're 25 years old, you're 30 years old, you have to think about these things. And things have changed from our time when there were gigs and there was a way to make a living. It's not like that now.
With all the experiments you have done with transcribing, I heard from Ronan that people send you transcriptions or that you do those exercises when people are playing along the recording. You turn the volume down back and forth.
Yeah.
Were there any conclusions that you draw from all these? I think you shed a light on stylistic features and on the sound. If you can elaborate on these things a little bit more.
Yeah, and then especially the nuances. I mean, the way Sonny plays a note compared to Joe Anderson, they're close but not the same. That's the same instrument, let alone Joe Anderson and Miles Davis, two different instruments. I mean, there's a lot to be learned by being able to get inside the DNA of what we do. Transcription is DNA. It's seeing on paper, hearing in your head, and thinking like the construction of what this. Or how did that play? How did that happen? That F7th chord. Or that line. And not only what happened. Oh, he played a diminished whole tone scale. Blah blah blah. It's how he played it. What was his expression? Was it how? What was the nuance? Was it loud? Was it soft? Did he articulate clearly? Did he muffle a note? Did he bend the note? In other words, I'm looking at the way you did something besides what you did, because that leads you, the student, to finding out what they do that's unique to them. No two people are alike. It should be just like people in the world. Nobody looks alike. Nobody has the same fingerprints. It really should be. If I put 100 saxophone players in a room, they should have 100 different ways of talking because they have different voices when they speak. It sort of works like that, but not, of course, on that scale. But everybody has a voice that's their own. Everybody has a way of expressing themselves with their hands, with their eyebrows, with their lips, with whatever, that is transferable to the instrument in some way. In other words, what makes Dave Liebman sound like Dave Liebman on the soprano? It's not my equipment, because that's a dead end. When you do, it's the horn. I love this one, little sidebar. Phil Woods, who had a great way with words. He said, I came off the stage, and somebody came up to me and said, man, and you know this because we always hear this, man, your horn sounds great. Or your guitar sounds great. What a great sound you're getting, like that. And then he takes the horn, he puts it next to his ear, and he says, I don't hear anything. The point being, you are in control of that piece of brass. And that's when we go back to the first two things I'm going to say to you when you come into the beginning of getting to lessons. You're in control of the sound. Listen to the way Sonny Rollins did. Do it the way Sonny did. Did it the way Coltrane did. You don't have to do too many examples. You don't have to go crazy on this. This is not a 20-year project. This is 5, as I did in the class, I'm sure. 5, 6 solos over a year, 2 years. And very important, besides the exact imitation of what was played and how it was played, I want analysis. And that, again, I don't know if we did that in class, because that's a turn. That's a course. We take the lines we take the lines from bar 4, we put them with bar 5, we listen to all the 2 5s in bar 8, we take the best 2 5s, we make advantage, make a story out of it. There's a whole deal that goes on. It's about a 3-month process. And if you do that once or twice with analysis, play along with 5 or 6 solos, rhythm changes, blues, a modal tune, the usual shit. If you do that, you at least know what came before. Now we have another talk. And now we talk about who is Peter? What do you got to say? And usually now we get to subjects that don't have to do with music. What philosophically, what do you think? What's your religious standpoint? What's your philosophical standpoint? This is when you're hanging out with friends. You're hanging out, it's 1 a.m, and you put on Coltrane. And everybody's had a beer or a taste, smoked a joint. You're really hearing great. People start talking about that. You hear the way he played that G sharp? You hear that shit? That's what's going to happen when you analyze. And if you can get to that degree of detail, that's going to make things a lot clearer. Plus, not everybody does it, so you're already heads up, among your peers probably, because everybody says they do it, but they don't do it. I mean, look, school is not a cure to cancer. School is a stage. The stage is you're with other people doing what you're doing. That's the real truth. And maybe you get one teacher. I always say this, and I'm exaggerating, of course, but if you get one teacher, and I had a couple, who changed you by something they said, or by their way of being, or by you observing their way of being, by over a year, 2 years of being with them, whatever, you have gotten what school's about. Now, the fact that they're teaching C7 and you're done with it, you did it already, tough luck, do it again. In other words, the misconception is that school is going to give you the answer to life, but it's not. It's a process. The answer is going to be when you start asking those questions after school, which we just talked about. So that's another thing. And otherwise, though, I must say, again, on the positive side, having watched jazz education so closely for the last 40 years, it is really in great shape. I mean, I was at a school last week in the middle of Florida, Orlando, for Disneyland, Central Florida University. I had 50 kids. They played one of my tunes. They sounded great. I made a couple comments, made a couple of jokes, told them a Freddie Hubbard story with the tune, blah, 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 blah. Had a nice steak, played a concert with the teachers, deal done. Those people sounded good. They were playing good. And they were sincere and they were honest. And I could tell by, as soon as I walk into a room, I could tell the attention span and what's going on. And these days, everybody who likes jazz, they're interested. You like jazz. They like it. They're glad to be there. They're so thankful that you came. So jazz education is really in great shape as far as jazz education goes.